Alrighty guys, this is it. 2021 has come to an end, the year is over, and it's a cool time for me to look back because this is actually my first year as a full-time YouTube content creator, and it's been fun. Like, it's been a lesson, I've learned a lot, I've had a lot of fun, but I do gotta say right off the bat, thank you guys for watching, thank you for subscribing, thank you for interacting with the channel, liking videos and commenting, because you guys make it possible for me to do what I love. This is literally my dream job. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, if when I was a kid, you asked me what my dream job would have been, it would have been this, building trucks and having fun. And with YouTube, thankfully, well, I can make my dreams a reality. So thank you guys, because literally I could not do it without you. Today we're going to be installing some cool parts on the step-side Silverado. I had a company reach out, they make LED fog lights. And when I bought the truck, the original fog lights were kind of smashed up, so I put in a cheap replacement set, and they work, but like almost immediately after I put them in, this company reached out and said, hey, we've got some pretty cool LED fog lights. They're a direct replacement. We want to send you a set so you can try them out and make a video review. So I said, absolutely, why not? So that's what we're going to be doing today. But also, before we get to that part, I wanted to there's two things I wanted to bring up about the step side. First thing, on the exhaust that we just finished up in the last video you saw, I think I kind of undersold like how much of an improvement the exhaust made, because I made that video that was my initial reaction, but then the more I drove it around yesterday, kind of doing some errands and stuff, I went to a drive-through, the more I realized like the drone has been significantly reduced. Like, it's not gone altogether, but like before it was just unbearable on the inside. Like the entire interior would rattle and shake, but now it's like so much better. So I think the next thing I'm going to try is actually something a lot of you guys have suggested down in the comments. And that's installing some sort of like a Dynamat or a boom mat, something on the interior. They'll just, take the carpet up, take the back panel off, and you'll stick this stuff on there. And basically what that'll do is just it's like a thick, I don't know what you call it, even like, I almost think it's like a tar substance, but basically it just kind of dampens vibration and it stops noise transfer. So I think that's going to be the next thing that I try in my effort to finally tweak this exhaust to where I like it. But yeah, it's so much better than I feel like I portrayed in the video. The next thing I want to mention on the step side is we got to re-gear this in the worst way. Like, I tried to do a donut at the end of the last video, and it did it for a second. This truck does have the G80 differential, which is like they call it a locking differential, but it's basically a posi that has an actuator that turns on and off if there's wheel slip detected. So anyway, I tried doing a donut at the end of the last video, and like right as it started swinging around, the G80 decided to unlock and it went into the one wheel peel. So I was like, that's the most frustrating thing in the world. And I know we're going to be going to all-wheel drive, and eventually we'll be able to do all-wheel drive donuts, but basically we need a better traction device on the rear end, and we need better gears. I already happen to have a set of 430s that were in the 8.6 10-bolt in the ugly truck, but that was just too much RPM for the big block. But for this little 4.8 that makes a lot of power at a pretty high RPM, the 373s that are in here just aren't going to cut it anymore. So, especially because eventually I'm probably going to convert to a 4L80. So we're going 430s, and I think the order of operations here, the very first thing or next thing that I want to do, we're going to do a re-gear with a true track out back. Then I'm going to get a matching set of 430s for the front. This is my all-wheel drive front differential. And I'm kind of anxious to get going on this portion of the things because it's wintertime here. It doesn't snow a whole lot. I don't want to miss out on the chance to drive this truck, this truck being all-wheel drive in the snow, because that's one thing I've never done. I've done four-wheel drive trucks a ton in the snow, but I just think it would be cool to do this little all-wheel drive while it's still slippery out. So that's my goal, is before the end of the winter, I want to get this thing completely re-geared and all-wheel drive. So I'm ordering parts like as we speak. I'm working on that right now, so I'm excited to get going on it. So yeah, that's kind of up to speed, I guess, on where we're at right now. So let's talk about fog lights real quick, and we'll get them installed. So I was about to tell you about the fog lights that I put on there, but looking at this hood just kind of reminded me I need to do something about this because I can't stand how awful this hood looks. Like I've never seen this before, guys. Like it looks awful. Like this paint is just chipping and peeling and it's doing this weird cracking pattern. Like normally these trucks, my ugly truck and the roof of this one, they kind of do this where the clear coat fades and peels, and I kind of actually dig that look. Like to me that looks cool, but this just looks ridiculous and awful. And not only that, I eventually want to change the front end. So this was just my, I guess, reminder to myself. I'm looking for some front end parts, so if you've got anything, help me out. I'm looking for either like a 0102 HD hood, ideally one that's in black. I'd like to find an original one if I could. Like the most ideal thing would be to find a black HD hood that's kind of faded that would actually match the roof of the truck. I think that would be killer. Or the other option that I'm trying to do, I wouldn't mind converting this to like a Denali front end. You know, a Yukon Denali, they had a little different hood, the GMC grille, the lights, the bumper with the painted bumper cover. I'd like to find one of those. So if you live near Utah, you know, maybe Idaho, parts of Colorado, if you're anywhere near, you know, the central part of Utah, and if you know where any of those parts are, either an HD or a Denali, and you have some parts you'd like to sell, hit me up, drop me an email to tolmanperformance@gmail.com. I kind of keep on the local Facebook classifieds, and I haven't found anything yet that matches what I want. I could buy like a complete Denali to part out. I see those from time to time, but I don't really want to go that route. I'd love to just find, you know, someone who has a hood in the front end that they'd let go, so we can get the front end of this truck looking a whole lot better. But anyway, today we're supposed to be talking about fog lights, so let's get back to that. These here are just inexpensive Amazon replacement fog lights because my original ones were smashed. They fit okay, they work. I mean, they turn on and all that good stuff, but they're kind of janky when they fit in there, like they rattle around a little bit. So when this company reached out and they said, hey, we've got some LED fog lights we'd like you to try, I said, absolutely, why not? On Amazon, their store is called 4x4 FLSTC. I'll put the link down in the description below. And this is what the fog lights look like that they sent me. So the first thing that I was looking at is just how they're constructed, because this is one thing that bugged me about the last set. The bracket was super thin plastic. This one's fairly thicker. It's got some reinforcement in there. The little pivot part right there, this one is like ultra beefy. So I feel like this mount is much stronger. And then the back of the light has that heat sink in there. These are made from like, it appears to be like a die-cast aluminum or something like that. It has the plug in there so it'll, you know, connect directly to your truck's wiring. So that's a bonus. It has the little threaded adjuster on there so you can aim the light. And then this is the part that you see. It kind of has a really cool look to it. It's got a smoked lens or whatever on there. So yeah, this is basically the fog lights in a nutshell. I can't say much else about them. They're supposed to be a 30-watt LED, and I believe they said it puts out 2100 lumens of light. So that sounds pretty good to me. They're pretty simple to install as a direct replacement for the factory fog lights. Just quick side note though, if you have a base model truck without fog lights, like my ugly truck when I first bought it, it didn't have fog lights in it. But the little lower valance there, it actually had the molded out section. So on the ugly truck, I actually added tow hooks and fog lights simply by cutting out the little blank spot in the back of the pocket, and the holes are already in the bumper to mount them. So if you want to retrofit a base model truck with either tow hooks or fog lights or both, like I did on the ugly truck, super simple. All the hardware is already there. So for now, I'm just going to jack this up real quick and we'll swap the fog lights out and give them a test. Okay, I've got one old light off and I just wanted to show you guys the difference between the two, because these old ones, they're basically garbage. Like the pivot that actually holds the light onto the bracket so you can kind of aim them up and down, well, that pivot is nothing more than a plastic push pin You can see kind of one on each side. The frame is really thin. This whole light weighs probably like 1/3 of a pound. So, and the adjuster spring, like, see how weak that is? So this got the job done, but definitely not quality. Where this one, like, look at that mount part right there. That's a solid 3/8 of an inch. It has a solid pivot instead of a plastic body pin. It's held together with screws. The adjuster spring right there is like way solid, so that's not going to vibrate and rattle around like the other one did. And this whole light assembly is much heavier. So very impressed with the construction so far. So let's get them on. So I've got all the lights off in the shop. We have one LED fog and one original fog light on here, and I just wanted to kind of show you the difference. The LED is on the passenger side, and first of all, look how crisp and clean that cutoff is. So it has a nice low angle, and yeah, the truck is still jacked up in the air, so it's going to be a little bit high right now. But the cutoff line, like, really crisp and clean, and this is like super bright. Compared to the old one, I've got just a piece of cardboard here to kind of give it something to reflect against. Like, it's just kind of dim and yellow, and it doesn't really do much of anything. Where this one, like, once I get out of the shadow here, like, just look at that. That is really bright, and that is definitely not. So I'm gonna get the other one swapped in, and I think a little bit later tonight I'll take this thing outside and show you guys really how bright these fog lights are. I've got the adjustment of the fog lights kind of roughed in, and once we take it outside, we'll dial it in for good. But basically all I did was take a measurement from the floor to the center of the bulb, about 14 inches, and I made a mark on this piece of cardboard the same 14 inches from the ground, basically just kind of leveled or adjusted both lights so they're projecting straight ahead. The good thing about a low fog light like this with a nice even cutoff is even if they're mounted perfectly level, you're not going to be blinding oncoming traffic because it's only 14 inches from the ground, and the cutoff means that there's no light being projected above that. The other cool thing is both of these lights actually lined up level, where I have seen some aftermarket lights where like one cutoff will kind of go at an angle uphill and the other one will be down, and it just kind of looks funny, but both of these made a nice even cutoff straight across. So I'm happy with that. If you want to pick up a set, I will put the link in the description below. These will fit 01 to 06 or 07 Suburbans and Tahoes, or 99 to 02 Silverados. Basically, if your front end looks like this, those fog lights should work, and they might have applications for other stuff, so just check them out on Amazon 4x4 FLSTC, I think is their store name. The next thing I'm going to take care of on the step side is the camshaft sensor. I've been having an issue where sometimes it won't start up. It'll just crank and crank and crank and crank, and no matter how long you crank it, it won't fire up, but it will occasionally like pop or sort of backfire through the exhaust. But as soon as you, like, say, stop cranking, you hit the key once again, it'll instantly fire up. And from what I've read and my hunch, I think the cam sensor might be responsible for that. And the reason why I have that hunch is because I put a aftermarket replacement sensor in, just your generic parts store replacement, in when I put the engine back in the truck. And the reason why I swapped it is because the original sensor that came in the truck was, the O-rings were cracked and the sensor was actually leaking internally. And it was dripping so much oil that covered the entire truck, the bottom side, with oil. So I wanted to put a replacement in, and I actually couldn't find a genuine Delco replacement, you know, a GM sensor. So I just went to the parts store and I picked up a replacement. But I have had issues several times in the past where a replacement brand new sensor just doesn't work right. So what I did is I went onto eBay and I actually found a low mileage replacement sensor. The O-ring is still nice and soft, so I think it'll seal just fine. And from what the listing says anyway, this is a GM genuine sensor pulled out of an engine with supposedly like 40 or 50,000 miles on it. I don't know if it does or not. It was like 40 bucks, so that's cheaper than the replacement sensor I put in. That was like 60. So I think I can actually get this thing swapped out without having to remove the intake. I've never tried before on one of these. The cam sensor sits behind the intake on the back of the block, but there might be just enough room I can kind of reach my hands down in on the side or something like that. This side over here is a little bit tighter because there's the fuel lines and the vacuum line, but I'll give it a shot, see if I can get the old sensor out, and we'll go from there. So I was originally worried that swapping out the cam sensor was going to be a huge pain in the butt and it would take forever, and I was like, man, I hope I don't have to take the intake manifold off. But luckily there's just barely enough space to kind of get your arms down in there and work. You can't see a single thing that you're doing, but on the back of the engine on the passenger side here, just above the fuel rail, there's just enough room to kind of get your arm down in there behind the intake, and then you can easily unplug the sensor. And then on the right hand side here, I was able to get my other arm in and just kind of undo the bolt. And then I think the only other thing I had to do was remove the plug for the oil pressure sending unit, just so I could move the wiring harness just enough to allow me to pull the old cam sensor out and slide the new one into place. Luckily, because I had put the aftermarket cam sensor in just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, it pulled right out. It wasn't stuck or jammed in or anything like that, and I didn't have to worry about any dirt getting down in there. But I'm hopeful that this was the cause of my problem. Aftermarket stuff, I've had like hit or miss luck with it. And so I started the truck up a total of 4 times now, and I left about 5 or 10, 15 minutes in between each time, and every single time it fired up right away. So I've got my fingers crossed, and I feel like that was the cause of our problem. But I'll keep you guys updated. If it doesn't fix it, we'll figure out what's going on from there. So I will put a little bit of footage in probably right here to show you how the fog lights work at night. They definitely look bright in the shop, but we'll find out how bright they are when we're outside. And remember, the link for the fog lights is in the description. Check them out if you have any interest in getting a set for your truck. And that's going to wrap up the work that we're going to be doing in the shop here today. So I did want to take a quick look back at 2021 just to kind of see how the year went and give you guys a heads up in terms of what you can expect for 2022, because we've got some big plans and I feel like we're going to have a lot of fun. So we started out the year on the dyno with the ugly truck because I just barely finished up the turbo kit at the beginning of the year. And we wanted to find out, obviously, how much power it was going to make. So we started out at 5 pounds of boost, where it was like just around 400 horse, maybe 500 pounds of torque. And then we turned it up to a maximum of 7 pounds. That kind of maxed out the wastegate spring that I had. And on 7 pounds of boost, it made 480 horse and 620 pound-feet of torque at the back tire. And we drove it like that for pretty much the first half of the year. I went down to Arizona for the Pro Touring Truck Shootout, where we did like autocross, or I kind of drifted a little bit. And we did speed stop challenge and a few other odds and ends. I went roll racing with the truck like that. And we just obviously had fun. We drove it, we did some burnouts. And about halfway through the year though, I turned up the boost, I put a different spring in the wastegate. And then I haven't been back to the dyno since, but I feel like it's making a lot more power on 13 pounds of boost. That's kind of where we stopped, because those pistons in there are probably hanging on for dear life. They haven't caused me any problems yet, but I do want to have the truck back on the dyno before we pull the engine out, because in 2022 we have a bigger engine built for it. It's still a Gen 7 big block, but it's a 547 cubic inch engine. And then we get a bunch of other suspension changes that we're going to be doing to that. I'm going to be putting some drag slicks on it. We're going lower. We're doing Caltrax. I'm going to stay leaf springs, I think. But that's kind of what you have to look forward to on the ugly truck, the extended cab Silverado. And as far as the step side goes, we got a lot of plans for this one as well. We're going to start out by doing our all-wheel drive conversion and re-gearing like we kind of talked about. And then we've got this engine here. It's a 4.8. It's got gapped rings. It's got good head bolts in it. So we're going to put some boost to this one. I still am not sure what method, whether we're going to be using a turbocharger or some sort of a root style supercharger. That's kind of up in the air at the moment, but we are going to put a power adder on this guy sometime this year. Well, 2022, next year for me, presently this year for you guys. And so that's kind of what I have planned. And I am going to try to get another GMT 400 truck this year sometime. We got rid of the Suburban, but, well, it's sale pending, so I still have the Suburban, but I do want to get some sort of GMT 400 truck. I don't know what yet. I've looked at lowered long bed dualies. I've looked at crew cab short beds. I looked at single cab short boxes. There's a lot of different trucks out there, and I still haven't decided what I want to do, but I do want to bring one more truck to the channel for 2022. That's going to bring this video to an end. I do want to say thank you guys for watching, because genuinely, without you watching and without you interacting with the channel, I could not do what I am so very lucky to be able to do. So thank you guys so very much. I appreciate it. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned for next year, so stay tuned.